Hi, writers. Today I have the extreme pleasure of having my friend and the wonderful writer, journalist, author, Tracy Ross here with me. Tracy wrote the most incredible memoir, The Source of All Things, about 12 years ago now, right, Tracy? About 12, I think,
Yes.
which concerned her childhood sexual abuse by her stepfather in the outdoors. She is one of the most fearless people and writers I know. And she has gone on to write amazing journalistic pieces, many about her beloved outdoors and all the incredible athletic stuff you can achieve in the outdoors and the adventures you can have, but also about the internal adventures of life. And most recently, she has written an article for Outside Magazine about her brother's death about a year ago. So Tracy, take it away. Tell us about this article. And my main concern with this video and some others that I'm going to be rolling out is, does writing heal? Does the act of writing heal us? And in some cases, I think it does. And Tracy Ross is one of the greatest examples of that. So take it away, Tracy. Tell us what you wrote and then read some.
So I think this is a great question. And does writing heal? Does the act of writing heal? I wrote, a memoir called The Source of All Things that was basically a book that should have healed me from the trauma that I went through as a child by being sexually abused by my stepfather. That process was not healing. It was more traumatizing than healing. And I guess maybe it's not fair to say it wasn't totally healing, because in the long run, 10 years later, I do feel healed by that whole experience. I feel like finally I wrote the damn book. I did a bunch of media with my stepdad, i.e. my abuser. I went through many scenarios after the fact of like being okay with it, not being okay with it, being okay with him, not being okay with him. And now we're sort of on the other side. And funnily, like all this time later, I decided to take on another really painful story, family story, about my brother, Chris, who I had a fairly troubled relationship with because he was an alcoholic. And I was very involved in his life for a long time, trying to help him out, listen to him when he'd call me wasted, watch him take advantage of my kids in the sense that, getting them on the phone when they were teenagers, talking politics with them, walking them into corners that they couldn't get out of, and just kind of putting up with serious bullshit with him for a long time, until he finally died in May of 2020. What I'm going to read from is the beginning of something I wrote about taking him on a multi-day bike trip through northeastern Kansas, where he lived, to try to talk to him about his alcoholism and to show him that cycling could maybe be not a replacement for it, but something he could do that might quell his drinking a bit, because you can't really wake up with a massive hangover or be completely wasted and ride your bike. And I love bike riding and he loved bike riding. So I thought maybe it would help him. So sadly, it didn't, and yet it did. And you'll have to read the story to find out how it did. What I'm going to read from is the beginning of something I wrote about taking him on a multi-day bike trip through northeastern Kansas, where he lived, to try to talk to him about his alcoholism and to show him that cycling could maybe be not a replacement for it, but something he could do that might quell his drinking a bit, because you can't really wake up with a massive hangover or be completely wasted and ride your bike. And I love bike riding and he loved bike riding. So I thought maybe it would help him. So sadly, it didn't, and yet it did. And you'll have to read the story to find out how it did. So I'm going to read the beginning of the story. I'm going to read the first two sections. Hopefully that's about the right length for this, but here we go. Okay. My brother Chris was somewhere between his bedroom and the morgue when my plane took off from the Denver airport headed for Las Vegas. When I landed, my stepdad was there to get me. We drove to my parents' house in Henderson, Nevada in silence. That morning at 9:30, my mom had walked into Chris's room and found him dead, lying face up on his bed, his mouth, neck, and chest crusted with blood. My mom started screaming, first at Chris and then for my stepdad. He came running, saw Chris's body, and dialed 911. When he called and told me what had happened, a sound came out of my body like nothing I'd ever heard before, and it kept coming as I crumpled against the wall. My 8-year-old and her friend were playing on the grass outside the kitchen window. I texted the little girl's mother to come get her. Within an hour, I was on my way to the house where my brother had lived for the past 3 years, and where, on the morning before he died, he'd taken his bike out for a ride. It wasn't a long ride, just a half-hour spin through my parents' neighborhood. Later, I learned that he did this almost every morning. He'd leave just after dawn, before the desert heat rose up and paralyzed everything. He'd pedal 3 blocks in one direction, then turn and do 4, then back across 5 or 6, then home to my parents. By the time he'd adopted this daily ritual, there weren't many things that made him happy. But my mom later said that he was happy when he rode his bike. And though our relationship had become strained by then, I have a text from him dated March 18, 2020 that reads, "When this pandemic's over, let's plan on riding a little of the Katy Trail out near St. Louis." Chris died the following May as COVID-19 raged. That message is hard for me to read because it shows that my attempt to help him wasn't in vain, just too late. The idea of helping Chris came to me 6 years ago after a phone call that left me rattled. It was mid-morning, a Saturday, when I answered and heard him slurring. "I'm so sorry," he said. "I promise I'll be a good boy. I promise I'll stay home tomorrow." If he stayed inside his house, he could keep from buying the hard liquor that went down so smooth. That day, I finally decided I would do something. So I suggested that he and I take time off work and attempt a multi-day bike ride through a stretch of northeastern Kansas, a scenic part of the state with more rolling terrain than many people expect. The plan was to ride 100 miles in 3 days, camping or bunking down in small towns along the way. We couldn't take on more mileage because of Chris's condition. He was 48 and weighed 225 pounds with high cholesterol and high blood pressure. Before our trip, he learned that he had alcohol-related liver disease. It involves severe liver damage from decades of excessive alcohol use. In any event, we made our plan: meet at his apartment and head west on bikes equipped with trailers. When I got to his place, he was in the parking lot staring into the sky, asking me to name every planet I could see. He was so drunk, he couldn't name a single planet. We walked up exterior stairs to his apartment. On the floor beside the front door, I saw a 3/4 empty 12-pack of Boulevard beer. I thought it was an unstated rule that we wouldn't be drinking on this trip. I mean, he knew why we were going: to enjoy a brother-sister adventure, and maybe to talk about his history with alcohol in the hope of helping him slow down, if not quit. But the second we got inside, he cracked another beer, slumped onto the couch, and started up with the gloom. "I told Mom if she dies, I die," he said. "Why would you even say that?" "I'm afraid. It's the loneliness. I don't know how long I can take it." We went to sleep uncomfortable. In the morning, things were better.
So I don't know if at this point, if you're feeling the healing that you experience, this may be an interesting day to ask you that question, since it's going to press today being November 29th, 2021, for the December issue of Outside Magazine. But can you speak at all to the healing properties of actually writing painful personal stories?
Yeah, I mean, with The Source of All Things, the most healing thing about writing that story was that for the first time in my life, I looked at myself like little Tracy, childhood Tracy, this scrappy kid growing up in Idaho, enduring this thing that my dad had done and would do for a long time to me, and then running away, and then, being reunited with my family, but then sending myself to boarding school. And as I wrote it, I was able to like own the fact that I was a little badass from the beginning and for the first time. And so in that way, I became less of a victim to myself and more as a like hero. So that
Yeah.
was very healing in that way. Very, very healing in that way. And then this story, it was healing for me to get to process a lot of the kind of shit that my brother and I went through over his drinking. And also, ironically, to be able to share it all with my parents. As I was revising it after he died, I would write a section, I would send it to my mom, I would text it to her because she found my brother. I mean, this has destroyed her. And it was healing for me to write a section, send it to her, let her read it, let her respond, send her another section. So we were kind of like processing his death together as I wrote this story. Also, really powerful to have my older kids read it. Scout's now 20 and Hatcher's 19. And, you know, they had to put up with an alcoholic uncle who they wanted so badly to be healthy and normal, because when he could show his good side, he was just the most awesome person around, you know. But then he'd show up at my house at Christmas just wasted off the plane, and our whole family would spend days trying to say, like, why are you doing this? Like, you're drunk again. It's 2 o'clock on Christmas Eve. We wanted to go skiing. We brought you here because we wanted you to, like, we know you love it here. He's buried out here now. Like, we know you love it, and we want you to be present for us because we love you so much. And then to, you know, have them understand, have a deeper understanding of alcoholism as a disease and who their uncle was before he became a person who had closed off his life. Like, that was incredibly powerful for me, and I think healing for them. I know it was. They've said it was.
Tracy Ross, thank you so much for joining me on this auspicious day. And everyone, buy the December issue of Outside Magazine to read this amazing sounding story. And buy The Source of All Things, which is a wonderful memoir. And Tracy, you're the best. So great to see you.
Thank you. You are too. I love you.